All right, Rob. We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to LTC Heroes, short stories from the front line of long-term care. And Rob, you might have to correct me, but I'm going to try my best. Today, I'm joined by Rob Nahmensen. Did I get it?
Close enough. That works.
All right. Who is the Regional Vice President of Operations at Focused Post-Acute Care Partners. Rob, tell me where you are right now in the U.S. Tell me a little bit about Focused Post-Acute Care Partners, how big you all, where you all are located regionally, and what your biggest challenge is right now in February 2022.
Perfect. I work for Focus Post-Acute Care Partners, where we provide long-term care for at 31 nursing homes across the state of Texas. I'm based in our Houston region. I'm the RVP over our Houston South region, our Gulf South region is what they call it. So I oversee some facilities in Houston, as well as a couple outlying communities, a few up in the East Texas region, as well as Corpus Christi and Austin. The company also has buildings out in West Texas as well. So we're a Texas-based company. And so, like I said, I'm over our Houston region. And right now, I think our biggest challenge, I would like to say COVID recovery, but I don't know if we're quite through COVID or not. But really, it's staffing and census. But honestly, I think that's always been the challenge in long-term care, right? Probably maybe a little bit more exaggerated with COVID. But that's really our big focus is right now as we go into February of 2022.
Are there any specific goals related to staffing or census that you are involved with in operations that you're focused on in this first quarter or going into the second quarter?
Ideally, with staffing, our goal is we're trying to get agency out of our buildings. It's been a challenge to do. I mean, there's a lot of competition in the marketplace for staff right now. But that's really what our staffing goal is try to get agency out. And obviously, that comes with a lot of focus on the recruitment and retention side of things to try to not only bring new team members in, but also keep the ones that we have. And then on the census side, we're just trying to kind of rebound from where we were at with COVID and trying to get to a place where we can be profitable. As they always say, you need the margin to have the mission. So definitely trying to just keep that census flowing in the doors.
And do you sit in meetings with marketing and sales? Do you oversee either one of those areas? What are some unique ways you're going about to address either the census or unique ways to get agency out of the building?
I oversee marketing, and unfortunately or fortunately, I guess, like I said, it's a challenging environment. I think the biggest approach, and what I really talk to my team about when it comes to the marketing side, even the staffing side, is how do we make ourselves unique? Obviously, there's plenty of competition in the marketplace. I've heard as much as, we're 50% overbedded in the state of Texas. And so there's a lot of competition out there. And so what I try to push to my team, whether it's the marketing, whether it's the staffing, is how do we set ourselves apart in the marketplace so that, when somebody comes and visits our facilities, whether it's to bring a loved one in or it's to come work for us, is what makes us unique. So whether that's our customer service on the census side, starting from the moment that resident walks through the door, we have this awesome program called the Rules of Three, in which we really focus on, again, that first impression. Within that first 30 seconds, we're greeting the resident. Within the first 3 minutes, they're in their room. Within the first 3 hours, we make them comfortable. We make the family comfortable. Within the first 3 days, we're contacting the family members. So again, it's how do we set ourselves apart and from our competitors. And we do the same with our on the staffing side. We've got this awesome employee recognition program called our Rockstar program. And really we're highlighting our rock stars, those awesome employees who go above and beyond taking care of our residents for us day in and day out. And so that's really what kind of my focus and my messaging has been with my team is, hey, how do we set ourselves apart? How do we make ourselves unique in the marketplace? We're not just another nursing home in the long list of nursing homes.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into long-term care. And I guess let's start off it can be personal or professional, but I know by your resume, you've come from acute. You've been quite all over the country, especially the Midwest. So I know when you talk about marketing and sales and operations, you have rural experience, you have urban experience, and you have different geographic experience. Can you just take me back to, your first time into healthcare and then how you got into long-term care?
Perfect. So I actually kind of got into long-term care and kind of healthcare, just kind of fell into it by accident. I started volunteering at a nursing home when I was 14. I was doing it. I was actually in Boy Scouts at the time, and just kind of did it because, hey, I just needed some volunteer hours. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I loved walking up to residents, those who were down, who had their heads down, and just talking to them, and just having that simple conversation, and just seeing how it changed them in that moment, how they lit up.
Where was this? Where were you? 14?
I was 14. Yeah, I was
Where
in
at?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
At a nursing home in St. Louis. And just after that time and that experience, it really just, I kind of got a passion for it and a love for it, and just stuck with healthcare ever since. And like you said, as my journey's kind of taken me all over the place. Because after that, I kept volunteering, and actually went and worked for that nursing home in St. Louis when I was in high school. I was actually doing their their activity center, their fitness center. I was kind of helping run that when I was in high school. And then initially when I went to college, I actually went to school initially to do institutional chaplaincy, with kind of the goal of doing nursing home chaplaincy. Started down that path, and actually made it almost through seminary, and then kind of had a change of heart, a kind of change in direction, and ended up on the business side of things. And so I started working for Good Samaritan Society out of Minnesota. I did my administrator and training program with them. I did a little bit of internship work with them until I got my first administrator position actually up in Idaho, with Good Samaritan. Went and worked for them for a while. And then I actually switched over to Consulate Healthcare up in Idaho, and worked for them up in northern Idaho for a little while before I switched over to that acute side and went and worked down in Kansas actually for critical access hospitals. And then kind of had a whole variety of experience down there doing all the different levels of C-suite, from CFO, COO, and CEO, before I kind of fell back into long-term care again. So,
is there anything that you learned from your time in acute that you brought over to post-acute that you might not be aware of, or have taken you longer to learn?
I think for me, the biggest thing that I probably learned, especially on the acute side, is really more, for me, it was more about a leadership lesson, you might say, as far as, how do you manage an organization? How do you look at the bigger picture? I think oftentimes, especially like on the administrator role, you can kind of get very hyper-focused on, hey, this fire needs to be put out. Hey, this fire needs to be put out. And you kind of lose focus of some initiatives and some directives. And so being like a CEO and having that larger role, it allowed me to kind of see, okay, how does the whole organization fit, and how do we need to keep driving the mission forward while taking care of our residents, and where do you find that balance at?
When you were jumping around, is there anything that stands out for you as a lesson from the rural to the urban setting, and vice versa, that you learned in urban that serves you in rural, and rural serves you in urban?
I actually like the rural setting better.
Why is that?
It's just very more, for lack of a better term, kind of family oriented, very more personable, very more close. Being in the Houston market now, obviously you're in this major metro, one of the largest metros in the country. It's a lot more business oriented. It's a lot more impersonal, you might say. So it's a lot more transactional. Where in that rural setting, it's very relational. That's really what your marketing is based on. That's what your employee growth is based on, is, hey, I got to have these relational, with the community or with staff to really grow. Where here it's more, business oriented, very, hey, black and white, what do my numbers look like? What do my, rehab turnaround numbers look like? And so it's really trying to, hey, how do I be still relational in a larger market, and, and try to incorporate some of that into what I'm doing now.
I would guess that of the executives I interview on LTC Heroes, more than 50% of them have stayed in one state from the beginning they started in long-term care till the moment that I meet them and interview them. In your case, you've been in at least 4 or 5 states that I've heard you mention today. Is there any difference in healthcare, or even more specific, long-term care from state to state?
I haven't noticed a lot, honestly. Obviously there's always going to be the wrinkles in regulatory. There's going to be some changes as far as how the regulatory bodies and what their focus is. But really, I haven't noticed a lot as far in the long-term care side. Really, kind of the work is the work, whether I've been in Idaho or Kansas or down here in Texas. The work's kind of all kind of the same. Like I said, there's always nuances with each state, and obviously some different locations being more rural versus urban.
Is there a moment? I'm going to ask you about a specific moment that kind of stands out to you and why you're in long-term care in 2022, right? Like there's a definitely a lot. I can probably name 100 industries that would have been easy to work in the last 2 years that it's other than long-term care. So is there a specific memory, maybe going back to when you were in high school, or a memory in the last 2 years of a hero or a mentor or a resident saying something to you that really stands out as like, this is the epitome of why I love long-term care, and when I go home, it makes me happy with the decision professionally that I've made?
I would say for me, that would be our CEO and owner of our company, Mark McKenzie. He really embodies. I've told him this a couple of times, who I want to be when I grow up, because one of the reasons I switched from the long-term care setting into the hospital setting is because I didn't like working in long-term care. I was working for some for-profit companies, and my experience in for-profit is everything gets sacrificed on the altar of making money, right? Mm-hmm. So who cares about our residents? Who cares about our staff? We've got to get that profit. We've got to get the census in the door, and kind of everything else gets sacrificed to try to meet that mission. And so that's really why I switched into the hospital side, because like that's not what I'm here for. I've got this more compassionate heart. I care about our residents and our staff, and so I made that switch to the hospital side. And then I kind of fell into the nursing home side again, not really by choice, and not really something I planned on staying with. When I first moved down I started with Focus Care out in our West Texas region. And I told my wife when I moved, I said 6 months and we're out of here. And I'm not staying in long-term care, but now it's been almost 3 years and I'm still here. And I really think that is attributed to the company that Mark McKenzie has founded, and the focus that he has, because he really is focused on the residents, on the staff. And yes, hey, we need to make profit. Obviously, like I said, we need that margin, but not everything is sacrificed for that. And to me, like I said, that's been very influential. That's really kept me inspired and kept me fired up about this industry, is that, hey, there's somebody else out there who's got that same mindset that, hey, we've got to take care of our residents. We've got to take care of our staff. Yeah. And yeah, is it going to cost us a little bit? Sure. But hey, is that what's going to be best for the business? Yeah. And so really, like I said, he's been that inspiration.
I'm glad you mentioned the example of Mark. While I don't know him, I'm sure that there's something that has happened either in a meeting that you've had with him, or an email, or a phone call, or some interaction of his with a resident. Is there anything that stands out that you could explain to me? If you were, I'm not trying to make him die, but if you were going to do his obituary today, what would want something that would stand out? Like, he taught me this, and I can remember the moment when it came, when you realized it.
For me, it kind of goes to something that he always talks about, which is kind of you might say, like the focus of the company, or one of the, can't even think of the word I'm thinking of, but really kind of the motto of the company, you might say, it takes a minute to change a life. And that's something that he talks about frequently, is about how, it doesn't take much to change and impact somebody. And, I think oftentimes it can be easy to overlook that, hey, these little actions, these little impacts can have huge impacts on people. And that's really, when he keeps talking about that and reiterating that point, and really, kind of like I said, it just inspires me and motivates me to, hey, I can do these little things. And that's what I talk to my team about, is, hey, we can do these little things that may not seem like much, but hey, they're going to have a big impact on people. And really, for me, that helps, kind of like I said, keeps me focused and keeps me motivated in the mission of the work we're doing.
I'm rather new to long-term care, going on about 15 months, and my interaction with people obviously has been much more limited during COVID than your experience over, a 10 years or so. Is there anything that you explain to your social circle, friends, and community about long-term care that they just don't get? The way that I try to explain it is I said, I feel like I'm hanging out with my grandparents and they're teaching me something to either not do to avoid their mistakes or repeat their success, their emotional success. Is there anything about long-term care that people just don't get that you try to explain to them?
That it's a lot harder of an industry than I think people give it credit for. I think on the hospital side, it's kind of like a turn and burn, right? You have people come in, they're going to be a short stay, and they're leaving. Where on the long-term care side, you build those relationships with staff, especially with residents. Some of those residents we've got in our facilities for years, and they become like family. They become like a grandparent. You have a relationship with them. You talk to them on a frequent basis. That when I go visit buildings, I see the same residents and interact with the same residents. And so when you have a resident that passes away like that, it has a major impact. You have that emotional investment that I think is really unique to long-term care that you really don't have in a lot of industries because of those long-term relationships that you build and the dependency on our staff that comes from the level of care that we provide.
Rob, are there any questions that I haven't asked you today that you would like to highlight either from your work or what you all are doing at Focus Post-Acute Care Partners?
I think I think the work that we do, like I said, I think our work definitely sets us apart. I know everybody probably comes on here and says that, right? That they're all unique in the industry, but I really think, like I said, I think we've got a very good focus at our company. And I think that, we really have been striving to be a disruptor as far as how we care for residents. Again, we're not just, hey, we're here for the profit, but we genuinely do care about our residents, and we really try to gear the company and how we operate towards taking care of our employees and our staff. That's something I'm really like. Again, I give a lot of credit to the company for is that we do really focus a lot on our employees, and we really do try to take care of them. Again, this industry is extremely challenging. I'm sure you hear that all the time. But I really think that how we go about handling and approaching the business really helps sets us apart and really makes us unique.
I appreciate it. And while sometimes, if you listen to every single interview that I've had over and over, some things might come off as sounding the same, but I definitely don't think that that's the case, as I've met so many leaders like yourself. You started off the interview by explaining that you guys have the rule of threes in marketing, and that's new. And I like that. It's easy to remember. So I appreciate you highlighting that. Before we sign off, Rob, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Experience Care. Go over to visit www.experience.care/guarantees. Experience Care is one of the oldest EHRs in the United States and one of the best. They're a pioneer in point of care. They have a financial suite that'll impress you. And they also have online training for anyone who's looking to adopt a new EHR. Rob, thank you so much for joining LTC Heroes. I look forward to communicating with you in the future, and hopefully I can meet Mark, your mentor on LTC Heroes. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Sounds great. Thank you.